All right. So yeah, Miami. It's the best. Where do you vacation there at all, or do you have friends down there or what?
I've literally been there like one time when I used to work
Oh,
in the tech industry. I had to go there for work, but I've been to Florida many times and I
sure.
like the vibe because you can go to like Key West and get like a super tropical vibe. You can
Yep.
like be in the city of Miami, get the city. You can go up to Fort Lauderdale. It's like there's just so much. So,
Yeah, I think it's like an hour, maybe an hour and 20-minute flight to Mexico, I think.
mhm.
Or like Cancun, I guess, like the normal
Yeah, and it's
vacation
super
spot.
close to like Bahamas and all of that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
we go down and stay at the Fountain Blue, which is in Miami.
Yeah.
It's a solid, I guess you call it like a resort hotel. But it's our favorite spot. We've never taken the kids there, but that's what we're going to probably do here in the next, I don't know, few weeks, just to
Nice.
get away, just to get
Yeah.
to. I mean, it's not exactly the warmest weather down there right now, but it's like 30 degrees here, so
Yeah. Yeah. No,
it's
it's
warmer than that.
yeah. Yeah, totally. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad we finally connected. I'm excited to talk with you because I have a pretty massive female audience. I work mostly with guys inside of our coaching program, but most of the guys we work with are married, and I know their wives are constantly, looking for resources, looking for someone to connect with. And I know you do a great job of that. So I'm really excited to pick your brain a little bit about what you do, but also how you do it and how you get such great results for your tribe and your community. So let's just start with this because some people may not know who you are. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you got into coaching and what your background is.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Yeah.
I lived most of my life overweight. So I was overweight basically from a very young age, all the way until around age 18, when I decided to do something about it, really take charge of my life. And I'm talking, I was the girl who ate like McDonald's, 3, 4 times a week, followed by the ice cream. Like I had high cholesterol. I had to have my gallbladder out because I was in really poor health at a young age. So
Mm.
I really had to do something. And I didn't come from an obese family. Both my parents are very thin, always have been. I didn't get those genetics. So it's not like it was, lifestyle, it was family driven. They just ate what they wanted and they maintained, their weight. So it really consumed me from a self-consciousness perspective. Like I did really poorly in school. I didn't really care. I didn't feel that I had a strong purpose. And then when I went off to college, and that's what kind of propelled me to take matters into my own hands. And I lost over 50 pounds. I became like a straight A student. Like I totally changed my life because I started changing my health and feeling
Yeah.
better, more confident. So then after college, and I would like train friends on the side, just like kind of write them plans and
Sure.
programs. So that's when I started dipping my toe as I was kind of going through my own journey when I was 18, 19. And then post college, I became a personal trainer. I managed a personal training studio. I taught fitness classes. I did that for several years, kind of worked my way up to lead trainer in the studio. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's what I actually went to school for. And I knew I had worked my way up at that particular studio. So I was like, I'm ready for the next thing. What's the next thing? And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up going back to school for an MBA, actually in entrepreneurship, and did that for a year. Always knew I was going to still pursue the fitness route, but still wasn't sure if I was going to start my own business right out of that program. Ended up in California, kind of working in the Silicon Valley, the world of Silicon Valley for a little while, did the whole
Mm.
startup thing for a few years. And it was fun, but it's a very tumultuous industry. There's, highs of highs and lowest of lows. One minute, something great's happening, another minute you're laid off. So went through several layoffs, and in between those layoffs, my boyfriend, now husband at the time, was like, you just got to like start your online business because you're basically doing it for your friends. This is what you love. So I started it. And then that was in 2015, and I was still kind of working for other companies. And then I'll never forget, I said to Varun, who's now my husband at the time, I was so miserable in my job. And it was like the great job on paper, right? You got great perks and unlimited vacation, and they feed you and they do all the things that they, do out there. And I was like, I don't care if I get fired. I don't care what happens. I was like, in the next 2 weeks, either they fire me or I quit. Like, that's it. And I gave it 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, I ended up getting laid off because the company was going through a very difficult time. And I worked in marketing, and that's the first to go.
Sure.
So that kind of forced me to go all in on my business. And I've been all in since June of 2016. So it's been just about 5 years of me being full-time in the
That's
online.
awesome.
So yeah, so that's how I got into all of this. And it's always
Yeah.
my passion. And, coming from someone who's not always been genetically blessed in the physique department, it hasn't been easy for me, but I wouldn't change it for anything because it helps me a lot relate to people.
Yeah, heck yeah. It's funny because this is the first time I'm hearing your background, and like literally we have an identical background. It's crazy. I was overweight going into kind of my second half of college, if you will, lost a business that I started after getting my associates, and had to confront some serious issues that were going on internally that were causing me to overeat and rely on food for emotional support. But my family's not obese. In fact, both my parents got me into working out. Like, they're both really into it. Right. So it's funny because, I think one of the misconceptions, and I'm sure we can talk about it, but, a lot of people look at someone who's overweight and they think, oh, it must be a genetic thing. Right. Or it must be like their parents just feeding them garbage, day in and day out. And for me, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. It was an emotional issue. And so there's a lot of complications sometimes that go into someone's history that result in what you see today, right?
Yep.
But yeah, spending time in the corporate world and just knowing in the back of your head, like, I'm meant for something different. You know what I mean? Like, my purpose is not to knock on the corporate world, because I love the corporate world in a lot of ways, and the people who work there are amazing, but I just knew that my calling was something different, right? So it's cool that we share that, because that's almost identical to my path as well. So who do you help right now? Like, who is your like perfect person that like without a shadow of a doubt, they show up, you got them covered?
Yeah. We really specialize in helping women. We work with, I've had a client as young as 19, and I've had one of my clients is 80. So really, I have all ends of the spectrum, but I would say most of our clients fall into that like 40 to 55, even like 35 to 55 age range. And they are just, they feel helpless. They've tried Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and Octavia, and their friends trying to sell them Airbon and all of these things, and they just feel like they're broken. And what we really do is we lift the veil and show them the truth about fat loss, that you don't need these quick fixes, that you can have a glass of wine, you can enjoy yourself, you don't need to restrict. And even more than that, and I'm glad you said that it's an emotional thing, because my belief is that anytime, 99% of the time, anybody who has gained unwanted weight, I'll say keyword being unwanted, there's an emotional issue at play, because there's no other reason. And I think you and I can probably agree to this. There's no other reason that someone would turn to food in an unwanted manner, like in their desire, and they're putting on weight that they do not want. The only reason would be to kind of try to negate an emotion they don't want to feel.
Totally.
So what we do with our clients is, yes, we do the very practical piece, the workouts and the nutrition and all of those things. But I tell my clients, like, that stuff doesn't even mean anything unless we take a 10,000-foot view and say, well, what got us here in the first place, and where do we want to go, most importantly? Yep. So it's a rewriting a story around food and habits, and really envisioning the person we want to be, while at the same time acknowledging what we're trying to shed the layers of the past, so that we can step into the new identity that we want to create. So that's what I do. I kind of blend the sort of like energetic and like metaphysical piece and life transformation piece with the practical, like macros and food and exercise and all of that. So
totally. Yeah, I heard a great analogy the other day, and it's something I've already started incorporating in coaching calls, is that oftentimes, like when someone comes in and they say, hey, I've gained, 30 pounds and I really don't want that weight. I want to be lighter and feel better. The immediate thought is like, let's start eating better and let's start working out. And like, those things definitely matter. I mean, we're realists, right? But that's like basically looking at a chain of dominoes and trying to knock down the fifth domino without the first four being knocked down. The first four being your emotional state, your stress, your,
Yeah.
preconceived notions about fitness, your beliefs,
Mhm.
all those things are the things we got to work on really from the beginning if we want the rest of the pieces to fall into place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A huge part of it that, and I want to ask you, like in our industry, there's so many mistakes that we see people make every day, right? And a lot of it is just being led in the wrong direction. What are some of the biggest, I guess, false beliefs that women who come to you who want help, what are some of the things they come into your program with that you help them with immediately?
Well, I think that we have a job in the industry, people like you and me, and there's a ton of great coaches out there, that we have to reset expectation, because every day and every night they're bombarded with messages of like, lose 10 pounds in 14 days. So if they feel that they're not achieving that, they almost feel like a failure. So I feel like from a belief standpoint, like you mentioned, it's like an expectation reset. Like, yes, this process might take longer. However, it's going to last forever. Like, this is a forever thing versus you lose 30 and gain 40, then you lose the 40 and it's harder and then you gain 45. Like, that to me is like the number one shift that has to occur. And I would say the other thing is that you have to shift from a very victim based mindset to a very empowered based mindset. And and I'll explain what I mean by this, but like when I was overweight, I was blaming other people. I was blaming my environment. I was blaming my body. Like I was literally blaming everything else except taking responsibility for myself.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what your goal is. You have to assume total and complete responsibility for your outcome. And it's really from that place, that's how we get empowered, and that's how we create true change versus like putting blame on external factors or saying I'm too busy, I'm too this is going on. Like, the more that we create excuses for ourselves, the more we stay the same. So I would say that's another belief that has to shift for people. And I would say the third thing is kind of what we touched on, in realizing that, and it just sometimes I kind of shake my head a little bit, not at people, because I think there's a big misinformation in the industry, but there's a lot of belief of like, oh, if I just have that macro calculator, that's the thing. If I just download that Pinterest PDF, like that's the thing. And it's like, true transformational change requires you to go deeper within yourself. And oftentimes that means that you need a coach or a mentor along the way. And Lord knows I've used them. I use coaches all the time. I have several now for different areas of my life. But it's like sometimes we're too in our own fog and haze to see the path in front of us. And that's where, if you really want to make a big change in your life, you're not going to find it in a macro calculator. There, funny enough, we live in the information age. We can get any information we want, yet 66% of the US is overweight. And I'd say like 85% are unhappy with their weight, at least
Mhm.
that. So I think those are the three shifts that people need to take, and kind of going along with this idea of a coach and making a big change. It's like people look at this kind of stuff like, oh, workouts, oh, good food for me, those are expenses. Like we have to shift the way we're thinking about our health and our goals. If you work on a goal and you achieve that goal, you've invested in becoming a better person. So it's like we have to almost shift the way we're thinking about getting the tools to help us. These are not expenses, these are investments. It's like you buy a house, you buy a piece of property because it is an investment in
Right.
your future. And same thing with this. So,
I
so yeah.
love that. Like, especially those last couple of points. With coaching and having someone to help give you clarity. Um, there isn't a successful person, and everybody defines success differently, but I believe there is not a successful person, no matter what they call success, who doesn't have mentors.
Totally.
I mean, everyone I follow who I look up to, they have mentors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's because I almost don't think it's possible for us to be our own mentor, right? I don't even think we could, if we tried our hardest, our brains are too wired to preserve our homeostasis and make us feel like everything's okay, that ultimately we're going to be our own downfall if we try to coach ourselves through these challenging tasks, right? Um, it's crazy, but you nailed it. Like, I mean, if you had a graph of like available information versus obesity, they'd literally be just going like this together, right? It's insane. Like, I tell people all the time, you don't need to buy my program if all you want is to learn workouts and how to set your calories and what foods to eat. Like, I put that stuff out for free.
Yeah.
It's what goes on internally and how you stay consistent and how you stay engaged and focused that is what you pay for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And
100%.
it's crazy how quickly, I mean, it's probably been, I mean, maybe 100 years or maybe a little more than 100 years where good food and exercise went from being from an investment to an expense, basically, or maybe from a necessity to an expense. I mean, imagine being, a Native American or something, like you'd be laughing to think that eating well and taking care of your body is like an option. Like, it's too expensive. Like, no, that's like, I literally travel in my body, like I live in my body. If I don't take care of it, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's insane. It's insane. So I think that it's like a paradigm shift that has to happen. And again, like I don't place any blame on the public or people or clients, because it's all that we've been conditioned to believe from a young age. Like it's in our movies, it's in, it's the way we see other people live, it's in the industry, it's on magazine covers. Like, so it's like the whole industry has to change. And I think, unfortunately, some of the big players in there, let's get real, they make most of their money from their repeat clients. That's these large programs that we see. I mean, show me one person that's done like, one of these programs one time, lost the weight forever, and their metabolism is in a fantastic place.
Yeah.
I haven't met it in my life or heard of it. So, so I think that it really does have to start with people like us, coaches out there, and programs out there that don't necessarily, I don't want my clients to be with me for life. I want them to be free and have the information. It's my job to teach and coach and help them evolve, but I'm not trying to get somebody to lose 20 and then gain it back and they come back. Like, that feels so icky to me. Like, I just want to help and help spread, what the truth is, so that, people don't feel like they're at the mercy of the latest fad diet. So.
Yeah, it's almost like the definition of insanity, right? In today's fitness culture, is that you see people go, yeah, I invested in XYZ program, I've done this program, or they buy it once, they get a little bit of results, and then they basically go back to where they were, or even worse, and then they dust it off again in a few months and go, all right, I'm going to try it again. Like they just can't get that light bulb moment where they're like, oh, this isn't sustainable. I can't keep doing, the 30 pounds in 30 days program, over and over again. Like, it's not going to work. But that's the industry we live in, where it's like, well, you suck, so you need to come back and do it again.
Right. Like, it's your fault for not, and that's another thing that I feel like has to shift, because, and you and I know this because we've been doing this for a really long time, but people think that if they fail a diet or they gain the weight back, it's their willpower. And I won't deny that willpower and discipline are important, but they're ignoring the body's own physiology, right? Where if you're on an extreme diet, you're way more primed for fat storage coming out of it. So is it really all willpower? I don't think so,
Totally.
So.
Yeah, we live in an Instagram world too, where you see a picture of a moment in time and you think that that's all the time. You think that I even tell my clients, like, yeah, I have pictures of me, ripped, 6% body fat or something, but it took a ton of work to get there. And there's no way in hell I'm living there.
Right.
Like, I just want to be healthy, most of the time. And if I want to get extreme for a small portion of time, cool, but that's just a snapshot, right? That's not how I live 90% of the time. 90% of the time is just about taking care of my health and enjoying life and being active. But, you see this like a female fitness model who looks insane. I mean, they're everywhere now. And you're just like, oh my God, like that's what I want all the time. But even those people don't look like that all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that, again, like going into this idea of how it makes people on the other side of the screen feel like, well, I guess I'm a failure if I can't achieve that, or I tried the thing that she tried and it didn't work this way. So I really do think that the standards need to be reset, right, from an industry perspective to help people realize what's more realistic and most importantly healthy for them.
Yeah.
So
What's your system like? So if someone comes in and says, "Hey, I have this weight I want to get rid of. These are my, this is my experience, this is my history." Where do you help a client start? Like, what's the best place to start?
yeah, so obviously we're looking at body composition via pictures, dieting history, what their goals are, how much weight they want to lose, and we're mapping it out from there from a nutrition and workout and mindset perspective. I'm of the belief that unless somebody has, like 10 pounds or less to lose, that I don't like getting aggressive with people right off the bat. I think that aggressive approaches can work for more advanced clients who have like 10 pounds or less. But anybody else, it's my philosophy that we keep calories as high as we can keep them while we get the body to lose weight, because this allows us to not sacrifice quality of life so much. And it also gives us levers to pull. Like, you and I know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do too, like the body's adaptable. So if I have a woman come to me who's 165 pounds and she wants to lose 25 pounds and get down to 140, if I just start her out eating like 1,300 calories a day, what am I going to do when she hits a plateau when she's 155?
Right.
Drop again to 1,100? Whereas had I kept her higher, maybe starting around 1,700, okay, like I have levers to pull, I have things to play with here. So my team and I look at our client data, both qualitative and quantitative, on a weekly basis so we can assess what's happening. But I really like to keep calories as high as I can keep them when a client is in a fat loss phase. And then I also tell people like the work isn't done there, because after you've lost the weight, I got to feed you up. So the second phase of our process is a reverse diet. And that's where after the client has lost the weight, we slowly walk the calories back up to around, like, I like to get my ladies at least like 1,900, 2,000 more if they want to, but I like to at least get there. And then I teach them intuitive eating, which is the final phase. So I take them through fat loss, reverse dieting, intuitive eating. And once somebody's been through that entire end-to-end process, I can say with 99.9% certainty, they will never, ever need another fat loss program in their life, because that's the entire process right there. Like, that's it. Like, I've taught you how to intuitively eat now, eating this high calorie number. So that's kind of our process. And of course, like where the mindset piece comes in is different clients have different challenges. So I could have two women who both emotionally eat, and one emotionally eats because her boss is being a jerk, and the other one emotionally eats because she doesn't even trust herself to lose the weight in the first place. So that's where we customize things even more, because every client, even though they might appear the same on the outside, there's a whole different world going on internally.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, those two second phases are things that a lot of people don't talk about. I actually think they don't talk about it because they don't know about it. They're not qualified to talk about it. But reverse dieting is a topic that I've actually seen people bring up more in my client groups, right? Because we have a similar trajectory where it's like, first of all, I don't believe anybody should focus on anything else besides getting healthy. And that means getting to a healthy weight. But that should be the first step. If they're like, hey, I want to run a marathon, or hey, I want to, climb Mount Everest or whatever. It's like, well, let's take a look at your health first, right? And a lot of times that means getting your body fat down, even just a little bit, to make sure that your internal systems are working properly, right? But then the question is always like, well, when I lose 20 pounds, then what, right? Do I got to like stick to these calories forever? Like, what's the process like? And I think even talking about those things brings a little bit more like light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, right? Where it's like, okay, I know this is going to be a little bit tough and I'm going to have to work on this and stay consistent. But at some point I am going to be able to eat more. right? But there's like a fear, I think, too, with a lot of people of eating more after they lose weight. They're like, no, I don't want to eat more. I don't want to lose all my progress.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a huge fear. And I had to do it. I had to actually learn it the hard way. So my first fat loss phase, when I lost the 50 pounds, I actually got too thin. I was like 102 and I'm 5'4". So that was like real skinny for me.
Yeah.
So I was stuck. I was eating like 15 to 1600 calories a day. And I was so nervous to increase. So, and I would start binging because physiology, right? My body was hungry.
Sure.
And I had to go through, I had to learn the reverse dieting process and start slowly. I also had to gain some weight and put on some more, mass, which I did.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, like it was hard. It was really hard, but I was like, hey, if you want to become a coach, you got to walk the walk, you got to do the thing. So, now I have several reverse diets under my belt and I don't have any fear, but I had to like go through it, and
Totally.
realize like, okay, like I just got to take the plunge and do the thing, but it's scary. You got to trust your body and trust your metabolism.
Yeah, I mean, I learned the real hard way. I did a bodybuilding competition because back in the day, like when I was going through this process, like there was no YouTube, influencers. There was no like, really reliable coaches. It was all bodybuilders, like guys who were like, yeah, I get shredded for a sport. I'll teach you how to get lean. Right. And so I did a show and then I got down to like 195 for a show. And then within like 2 weeks, I was like back up to 235. I was like, okay, this is insane. What is happening? Right. Like, this is crazy. All I did was eat like one extra meal. But I just wasn't taking care of my metabolism. Right. I just thought, oh, I can start eating 500 to 1,000 more calories a day overnight and everything's going to be fine. But it wasn't. It was like, it was depressing watching my abs disappear. I was like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah, that's just going back to the physiology, right? You were in a prime place for fat storage, and it happens a lot, especially I have a lot of friends. I've never done a competition, but a lot of my friends have too, and same thing happens.
Yep.
So yeah,
So
yeah,
when someone, because one thing I know a lot of people struggle with is, especially the females that I've interacted with and guys too. I mean, guys struggle with this a lot, but it's this whole idea that fitness has an end date, right? Where it's like, okay, Jamie, you told me the three phases. I got to diet down, I got to reverse diet, and then I got to learn intuitive eating, whatever that means, right? I'm not there yet. But then I'm done, right? Like that's what a couple of years I should be all right. It's like, how do you get people to work through that mindset? And also, how do you set them up for a lifetime of success going through those phases?
yeah. That's a really good question. So I tell my clients, and I say it a lot, like in my Instagram material and Facebook material, that if you decide you want to reach a goal, you're literally deciding to create an identity shift or an identity evolution, meaning that the way you're living now, like said with love, you can never live this way again unless you're okay with being here, right? And that's totally okay if you're all right with being here, but like make peace with that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're saying like, hey, I actually want to achieve the thing and keep the thing, then what you're really saying is, I want to make an identity shift and live life a totally different way. So I'm just very clear about that. Like we're wherever we are now, like this is it. Like your things are going to change and evolve. Like it's going to be for the better because you're telling me it's the desire that you have in your heart. But if you go back to the same habits, you're going to end up where you were, and you're telling me that's not what makes you happy. So
Mm.
when somebody realizes that they have a goal, but they're at point A right now, they have two choices, in my opinion. Either they need to make peace with point A and just stay there, and that's totally okay, or they need to do something about it and get to point B. What most people do is they sit at point A and they kind of take a few steps to point B and then they turn back. But they haven't made like peace with just staying there. So it feels like purgatory because they're like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I'm like, either make peace with where you're at or decide that you're going to freaking go for it. And that's it. So that's how I help them realize that like this is a lifestyle, transformation. And the way I believe that happens is, you change your beliefs, and that those beliefs change your actions. Those actions change your behaviors. Those behaviors change your lifestyle. Your lifestyle changes your identity.
Mm.
So that's kind of the chain and the way that I see things work. So that's really how, I explain that to them. Now, how I do that, there's only one way, in my opinion: time and repetition.
Mm.
That's it. It's like, we've all gone through moments in life that have been hard, a really bad breakup, a really difficult time. The only thing that will heal it and make it stronger is time, right? So nobody can wake up tomorrow and say, like, now I'm at my new identity. Like, you can have that intention, but what's actually going to lock it in and cement it in brick by brick by brick is the repetition and the time. So that's, how I do it with clients. I help them reinforce the habit. And nobody's perfect. Like, when a client comes into my program, we have a great way that we help our clients with binge eating and emotional eating. And I tell them, like, you realize that you're going to binge and emotionally eat while you're in my sandbox. And they're like, I am. And I'm like, yeah, but we want that, because I want you to start to, like, lessen the charge with that. And I'm going to teach you what to do instead. So it's also like realizing that even when you set out to change, even in your lifestyle, even when you're in good shape and you're maintaining, there's going to be moments that you slip up. The goal is to not make it mean more than it is, and to just keep taking votes for the person and the identity you want to embody.
You
So
got it. I love that. That's incredible. I mean, I like the you got to come to peace with where you are now, or you just got to, and what we call it in our group, you got to send it. You got to go for it, man. Like,
yeah,
there is no, and once you go for it, it's like a mentor of mine talks about surfing, and you drop into a wave, whether you're a surfer or not. You can kind of think about the analogy. Once you drop, you're done. You're going. Like, you're gonna go, and guess what? You're gonna fall a lot, but that's doesn't change the fact that there's no turning back, right? Because once you think about it like that and you go, okay, this old version of me is done, right? And now I'm dropping in and I'm sending it. It starts to almost bring a little bit of, I mean, a lot of clarity, first of all, but it's a mentality shift where it's like, hey, I'm not doing this as a temporary band-aid, and then I'm going to pull the band-aid off in a couple months and I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. Like,
right.
this is permanent,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
We
And that,
gotta we use this term too called you got to get into character. And I come from a family of actors. My mom was an actress, and you got to get into character sometimes when you're first starting out. You got to start to pretend a little bit, like, I'm already the person that I want to be. What is that person going to do? What actions are they going to take? Are they going to beat myself up when I screw up? Of course not, right? Because they know, like, this is what it feels like. And so, like you said, when you come on your sandbox, like, you're going to screw up. There's no magical, like, gateway that you just crossed into, like, oh my
right.
God, I'm a new person overnight. I mean, I think we would be billionaires if that were the case, but um, at the end of the day, there's going to be some slip ups, but you are now in a spot where you have feedback and accountability and support. And also, you're able to look at things and evaluate things a lot clearer. But you're going to have to become a new person. That's like, there's no way around it.
Right. There isn't. There literally isn't. And I love what you said about making decisions for the person that you want to be, because that's how I tell my clients to act all the time. It's like, what would that version of you do right here and right now? And the more you do that, the more you're just aligning to that person, right? You're calibrating to her and you're just becoming her. So that's super powerful.
So this might be a controversial topic. We might piss off some people, but that's okay. Uh, I believe that, despite the people out there who say, like, oh, men and women should totally do everything the same, and, like, stop calling it for ladies, stop calling it for guys. I think there are things that women need to consider that guys don't need to consider, right?
Mhm.
And vice versa too sometimes, right? Like, if a guy has low testosterone, I think he needs to get that fixed, right? If a girl has or different levels, same level of testosterone, she may not need to get that fixed because maybe it's not low for her, right? But there are some things like hormonal cycles and emotional issues that sometimes women deal with more than guys, and guys deal with other things too that are different than women. So, what are some of the things, and even if you disagree, I'm happy to discuss, but what are some of the things that females have to deal with, that you help them deal with, that may be different than the male population?
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you. I heard this somewhere. Someone said, like, women are not small men, and I totally agree with that.
Hmm.
And I happen to think that it, just a blanket statement. I'm going to be very broad, but they need two very different approaches to
Yeah.
weight loss. Because first of all, like, unless the man has struggled very emotionally with his weight for a very long time, he might not be like that. He just might be like, oh, like I just like need to lose weight. Like it's not a big deal. It's not really affecting me as much as it would be perhaps for the woman because of maybe different backgrounds. Society, women do have different societal, pressure.
Sure.
Um, so I think from a mental emotional standpoint, it's usually very different. And also from a biological standpoint, women's bodies are much more sensitive to major dietary shifts. This is why you see men intermittent fasting and doing keto and running a million miles, a day, and they're fine. But
Crossfitting their tails off.
yes, but if a woman does that, she's putting her hormones at risk because our bodies are actually meant to bear life and they're much more sensitive to major swings of stress and dietary shift. If you're a woman and you ever lost your menstrual cycle during a stressful time, that's why the body doesn't believe that it was a healthy environment to procreate. So it's like, we shut this shit off right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah. You could definitely swear.
Just want to check.
20 now.
You can bleep it out.
Right.
So yes, I totally agree with you. They need two very different things. I don't promote it a lot, but I do work with I have 2 or 3 men in my program now, although the majority of our program is pretty much all women. And they just the weight loss cycles are different. Like they can get away with more, just from kind of taking things when we want to go a bit more aggressive. So I plus men put on lean muscle tissue that much quicker. I mean, my husband just started working out again after months of taking off, months. And I see a difference after 3 workouts. Like it's not even fair for him. I'm like, what the hell? Your shoulders are back. It's been 3 workouts. And he's like, I know, it's crazy. So yeah, I think that women and men just need to, as a blanket statement, obviously everyone's different, but I approach them in 2 very different ways.
Yeah, it wasn't until I witnessed my wife have kids that it really hit me, right? Which was about 6 years ago. But prior to that, I knew okay, you might have to go on diet breaks during your menstrual cycle and the basic physiology that you learn becoming a trainer and stuff like that. But like what you hit on, where big changes, right? Extreme shifts and overnight drops in calories and things like that, how much that can impact a woman, women in general, from a energy standpoint, from a hormonal standpoint, from an overall wellness standpoint. It didn't hit me until I witnessed that process and seeing my wife go through different phases of diet and energy and exercise. And then after having a kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so easy for me. I had all these oh, it's so hard. It's not that hard for guys in a lot of ways compared to that. Right. So I think that, first of all, everyone is an individual. Everyone needs to be treated as such. But when you start, I see a lot of coaches oh, don't let, people lie to you and say that women need to, train differently or eat differently and do all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think guys can have kids yet. Right. I mean, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that need to go into a female approach, as well as a guy approach. But there's a lot of things that are more complicated. I mean, like I said, until you've witnessed a woman create a baby, I mean, it's the most miraculous thing on earth. I mean, it literally will blow your freaking mind. It's insane. Right. Yeah. And I just had to take a step back and go whoa, it's not as cut and dry as you might think. Right. And even now, my wife is 5 years from our last kid, and there's still things that she deals with from that experience. Right. And you have to take those things into account, and guys just don't have to deal with that.
Right. I asked my husband, can you carry the kids we have? Yeah. There's just...
I will never, by the way, because it's freaking hard. I mean, I witnessed almost, 9 months, and then a year and a half later, another 9 months of just pure hell. And I was like, this is insane. I don't know how you're this strong, it's unbelievable.
Crazy. Yeah. Totally.
So if you had a message that you feel like all women should hear, what would that be, especially in regards to the health and fitness stuff?
I would say for most people, what everything you've heard about fat loss and how to do it, how to keep it off is unfortunately wrong or missing a lot of that's got a lot of holes in it. And there are ways to reach your goal weight without starving yourself or killing yourself in the gym. And you don't need a bunch of pills or weird shakes. And you're not broken. So that would be my biggest sort of message to them. And, also just realizing, like you and I talked about before, that the workout piece, the nutrition piece, those are important. But what's even more important is having the belief in yourself, or starting to cultivate that belief, and realizing that it is an identity shift. And you've done hard shit in your life. You can do this if you want it, and it's okay if you don't, but if you do, it's time to just go for it.
I love that. Where can people connect with you? What's the best place for them to reach out and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. My handle is just Jaime Morocco. I do spell it a little funky, but I'm sure it'll be in the title of the episode, and or on Facebook. And I do have a free Facebook group called Weight Loss Made Easy, Cupcakes Included. So you can always search for that and find me in there.
I need to join that group. I like cupcakes. That's awesome. So first of all, I appreciate you coming on. I know I feel this way with a lot of really awesome guests, but we just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg, if you will, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that we could talk about. I'm sure we can talk again soon. But I would encourage everybody, listening or watching this on YouTube, to reach out to Jaime, especially if you're a female, and just at least start to follow helpful information, right? I feel like that's the first step, is start to create an environment of truth, right? Like not getting bombarded with like beach body. I guess I'll just throw them under the bus. V shreds, another one. All the people who just, let's be real, you just want your money, right?
Yeah.
Like, and not to say investing your money is a bad thing, but just put it towards the right investments, right? I mean, not going to dump all my money in a crap investment and hope that I'm getting return. Let's put it somewhere that's going to be worthwhile. And so start to invest your time into following people that are going to give you valuable information. So appreciate you coming on, Jaime. It's been epic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'll put all your contact information and where to connect in the show notes. But if you look at the title of the episode, you'll see how to spell her name. Because I will admit, I tried to find your Instagram and I typed in the wrong way to spell your name. And I was like, what happened to her Instagram? Did she like delete it or something?
Yeah, it's a little funky to spell, but
Hey, trust me. You talk about funky first name starting with J. I know, I created that fan club. So I totally understand. All right. Talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Let me just hit stop.